The night was heavy with silence, the kind that clings to empty, desert highways and turns every rustle of wind into something ominous. Bill Gates gripped the wheel of his silver Lexus, the dashboard casting a soft blue glow across his face. It was past midnight. He was driving alone through rural Arizona, heading back from a quiet philanthropic visit to a school district that hadn't made headlines in years. No cameras, no interviews, just teachers, dusty roads, and kids who asked smart questions about coding with eyes full of wonder. He hadn't told anyone about the visit. Sometimes it was better that way. Now, as the stars blanketed the open sky and the desert yawned on either side of the road, Gates felt something he didn't often feel: peace. The hum of the engine, the rhythm of tires against asphalt. It was almost meditative. He wasn't speeding. In fact, he was meticulous behind the wheel. 65, cruise control on, both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. Years of navigating corporate and global. Scrutiny had taught him control, precision, discipline. Which is why, when flashing red and blue lights erupted in his rearview mirror, confusion settled in before fear did. He blinked, glanced at the speedometer. No infractions. No swerves, just road, just silence. He instinctively signaled and guided the car onto the gravel shoulder, the headlights of the police cruiser glaring in his mirrors. This must be a mistake, he murmured aloud. Bill Gates had worked with countless law enforcement agencies over the decades. Through his foundation, through Microsoft, he had helped fund technology that protected officers. He respected the uniform. But as the cruiser behind him idled and no one emerged for a full minute, something shifted. He adjusted the mirror. A door creaked open. Officer Daniel K.S. stepped out, boots crunching across the shoulder. His silhouette, backlit by the car's headlights, carried an energy Gates recognized. Immediately, authority with something volatile underneath, one hand near his holster, the other swinging a flashlight that danced across the night like a warning. Bill lowered his window and placed both hands visibly on the wheel. "Evening, officer," he said, his voice calm, measured, unmistakably polite. KS didn't answer. Instead, the flashlight hit Gates square in the face and stayed there. Too long. The beam was blinding. "License and registration," the officer barked, his gum chewing audible in the silence between them. "No problem," Gates replied, slow and even. "But may I ask why I'm being stopped?" The officer paused. His jaw moved again. But there was no explanation. Just a second demand, sharper, slower. "License, registration." Gates complied with deliberate motion. His ID slid from a sleek wallet. He reached for the glove box with one hand still on the wheel. His driver's license and, on top of it, his personal identification as a representative of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He handed them over without a word. KS looked at the ID, blinked, smirked. "Bill Gates," he said, as if the name meant nothing. "What, that's supposed to impress me?" Bill didn't flinch. "No, sir. Just identifying myself." Then came the words that changed the air. "Step out of the vehicle." Gates inhaled once, subtle. A mental pause. He'd faced grilling on Capitol Hill, been targeted by conspiracy theorists, stared down CEOs and regulators across continents. But this wasn't a negotiation. This was a man with a gun. "Officer, I've complied with your request," he said evenly. "I've presented ID. There's been no explanation for the stop. I'm happy to wait here while you call a supervisor." "I don't need a supervisor," KS snapped. "Get out of the damn car." His hand hovered near his weapon now. The flashlight swung erratically. Gates kept both hands on the wheel, his voice a bit firmer now. "This isn't procedure. I know that. You do too." KS stepped forward, unsnapped the holster, and in that moment, silent, sharpened, final, Bill Gates knew exactly what kind of night this had become. Bill Gates sat still, both hands on the wheel. Officer KS's hand hovered near his gun. "Get out of the car," KS ordered again, voice sharp. Bill stayed calm. "I've complied. I've shown ID. You haven't given a reason for the stop. Call your supervisor." "I don't need one," KS snapped. "You think being Bill Gates makes you untouchable?" Bill's tone sharpened. "It doesn't make me above the law, but not below it either." KS leaned in, unsnapping his holster. The message was clear. The threat was real. "You're crossing a line," Bill warned. "You've seen my ID. This is unlawful." "You think that matters?" KS spat. Out here, I'm the law. He reached for the door handle. Bill's hand shot out, holding it shut. Step back, officer. And then, before KS could react, "Hey, I'm recording this." A woman stood nearby, phone raised. Flashlight from the screen catching the edge of her glasses. KS froze. The balance shifted. "You sure you want to do this, officer?" she asked. KS said nothing, but he stepped back ever so slightly. "This is all on camera," she added. Bill's voice returned steady and clear. "It's over. Put the weapon down. You're being recorded." Then headlights. A second cruiser pulling up behind. And Bill knew the stakes had just changed. The second police cruiser came to a slow, deliberate stop behind the first. The sirens cut out, but the flashing lights continued to wash the scene in red and blue. Shadows danced across the asphalt. Bill Gates sat motionless, both hands still visible on the wheel. His face remained calm, but his heart was drumming a steady, cold rhythm. The new officer stepped out. He was broader-shouldered than KS, slightly older, with a hardened, unreadable face. His badge read Blake. As Blake approached, he scanned the scene, the car, the officer with his hand near his holster, and the woman on the roadside. Phone held high and recording everything. "What's going on here?" Blake asked, his voice low and cautious. KS didn't answer immediately. He didn't even look at his partner. Instead, he stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "Non-compliant driver," KS finally muttered. "Wouldn't follow orders. Refused to exit the vehicle." It was a loaded phrase. Bill knew what it meant and what it implied. "Officer Blake," he said firmly but without aggression. "My name is Bill Gates. I complied with every legal request." I showed my ID. This officer refused to provide a reason for the stop, unsnapped his holster, and attempted to force me out of the vehicle. "That woman has it all on video." Blake's eyes shifted to Gates, then to the woman, then finally to KS. And for a moment, there was silence, like the air itself was deciding whose version of reality to accept. KS broke it with a scoff. "You can't seriously be buying this." Blake didn't respond. His hand hovered slightly away from his own weapon now. Not in threat, but in tension. From the roadside, the woman's voice rang out again. "I've got everything," she said, stepping a little closer. From the moment he pulled him over, I started filming when the officer reached for the door handle. "You really want to lie now?" KS turned on her, face flushed with frustration. "Put the damn phone down." She didn't move. "You're being recorded. Every word, every threat." Gates took a steady breath, then addressed Blake directly. "Officer Blake, I'm not here to make trouble, but I've spent my life dealing with people in power, real power, and I know when someone's abusing it." Blake didn't say a word, but the stillness in his body, the pause in his breath, suggested he heard it. And then from the distance, another siren. A third cruiser was approaching. The tension in KS's shoulders visibly shifted. His bravado began to unravel. His head snapped back toward Blake. "You're seriously going to stand there and let him talk to me like that?" KS hissed. "He's just some tech guy trying to look important." Blake didn't respond, but now his body turned slightly, angled away from KS, closer to Gates. Gates leaned into the moment. "This doesn't have to get worse," he said. "You can step back. Let the third unit sort this out. Or you can dig in." The sirens grew louder. The flashing lights reflected off KS's face now, sweat forming at his temple, his jaw tight. Blake still hadn't spoken, but Gates could see the shift happening behind his eyes. KS saw it too, and suddenly, the certainty that had fueled his authority began to fracture. "You think this is over?" KS growled under his breath. "You think some girl with a phone is gonna undo me?" Gates looked at him, calm as ever. "No," he said. "Your own actions will." The third cruiser rolled to a stop with a hiss of gravel. Two officers stepped out quickly, hands near their belts, eyes scanning the scene. One wore silver bars on his collar. A lieutenant. The tension didn't vanish. It just grew heavier. The lieutenant approached with firm strides, sweeping his gaze from Bill Gates, still seated in the car, to the woman recording, to officers KS and Blake standing in silence. "Someone want to explain what I'm walking into?" he asked. No one spoke at first. Then Gates answered. "Lieutenant, I'm Bill Gates," he said, slowly removing his hands from the steering wheel and raising them, slightly in plain view. "I was pulled over without cause. Officer KS refused to state a reason. drew his weapon and tried to force my car door open. This woman has the entire thing recorded. The lieutenant's expression changed just slightly as recognition flashed across his face. He turned sharply toward KS. Is that true? KS's jaw moved, his eyes darting. He was non-compliant, he muttered, the words now sounding brittle. The woman stepped forward just enough to be heard clearly. He showed ID, asked for a supervisor. KS threatened him with a gun. It's all on my phone. She held it up, screen glowing red from recording mode. The lieutenant looked at Blake. You were here. You saw it? Blake didn't answer immediately. His silence screamed. Cuff him, the lieutenant said, his voice firm, final. Blake blinked. Now. Blake hesitated only a second more, then reluctantly reached for his cuffs. KS stepped back, his voice rising. You're kidding me, he spat. You're going to believe them over me? Blake didn't respond. The cuffs clicked around KS's wrists like a gavel falling in a courtroom. KS's face flushed red, a mix of rage and disbelief. This is a mistake. You'll regret this. Gates said nothing. He simply watched, his expression unreadable. The lieutenant turned to Blake. You stood there and let it happen. That's enough. Blake's head jerked. Sir, You're done for tonight. Badge and weapon now. A second officer approached and took Blake aside. Another pair of cuffs came out. The silence was suffocating. The woman with the phone, Sarah, lowered her arm slightly, her hand trembling from adrenaline. She looked over at Bill. He met her eyes. Thank you, he said quietly. Somebody had to, she replied, her voice unsteady but firm. The lieutenant walked back to Gates. Are you all right? I am now, Gates replied. But this isn't just about me. This is about a system that let this happen. The lieutenant nodded slowly but said nothing. He pulled out his radio. Internal Affairs is going to want everything. And we'll need that footage. Sarah held up the phone again. You'll have it. Gates finally stepped out of the vehicle, the desert air cool against his face. He looked at the flashing lights, the officers in cuffs, the woman with the phone, and felt the gravity of the moment sink into his chest. This wouldn't be just another traffic stop. It had already become something much larger. By sunrise, the story had already left the highway behind. Sarah's video, shaky but clear, was everywhere. It showed everything. The flashlight in Gates's eyes, the tension in KS's voice, the exact moment he reached for the car door, and Bill's calm refusal. By noon, news outlets were looping it on television screens across the country. The headline varied slightly depending on the source, but the core was the same. Bill Gates pulled over. Threatened by armed officer. Entire encounter caught on video. Bill Gates sat in his Seattle office, watching with muted sound as a panel of commentators debated the footage. Some questioned how a man like Gates, wealthy, famous, white, could still find himself at the wrong end of authority. Others pointed out the obvious. If this can happen to him, imagine what happens to people with no camera, no name, no leverage. He didn't feel like a victim, but he did feel a responsibility. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls from attorneys, journalists, members of Congress, and even the president's chief of staff. He didn't answer most, not yet. He needed time to think. He turned his attention instead to a folder on his desk. Letters he had kept over the years from people his foundation had helped, schools they had built, programs they had funded, lives they had touched, and yet none of it protected him from what happened that night. That realization struck deeper than he expected. The Louisiana state. Police issued a brief statement that afternoon. Officer Daniel, KS, had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Officer Blake was under review. Internal Affairs would handle the rest. Bill knew what that meant. He'd seen statements like that before, enough to recognize soft language when he heard it. But this time it wouldn't be buried, because this time the world was watching. That evening, Bill made his first move. He called Sarah. She answered almost immediately. Mr. Gates. Call me Bill, he said. You saved my life. I don't think that's an exaggeration. She didn't respond at first. Then I knew it wasn't right. Would you be willing to join me in Baton Rouge tomorrow night? He asked. There's going to be a town hall. I want you beside me. Not as a witness, but as a citizen, she finished. Yes, I'll be there. The next day, they stood together on a small stage inside a crowded community center. Folding chairs packed with residents, students, ministers, and even former law enforcement officers. Cameras lined the back wall. Bill didn't speak first. Sarah did. She told them what she saw, why she stopped, why she couldn't look away. And then Bill stood. I've spent most of my life building systems, software, education models, medical infrastructure, he said. But no system is safe from corruption if the people within it are unaccountable. He paused, scanning the room. This isn't about me. It's about every person who's ever felt powerless in front of someone, with a badge and a bad attitude. Applause broke, not loud but long. That night, Bill Gates didn't just reclaim his voice. He shared it. 2 days after the town hall, Bill Gates was back in Seattle, but he hadn't returned to routine. There would be no coding labs or foundation boardrooms today. No emails about malaria vaccines or carbon capture prototypes. Instead, he sat with 3 advisors in a small room with no windows, holding a flash drive. Sarah's video, it's already changed the narrative, said his communications director. But if we go forward with this next move, it's not just about telling the story. It's about shaking the system. Bill nodded. Then let's shake it. He looked out the glass door toward a quiet hallway. A single security guard stood at the end. For the first time in years, Gates felt something he hadn't felt since his antitrust battles in the early 2000s. Purpose rooted in disruption. So, later that day, he stood at a podium. This time not at a product launch or TED stage, but in front of reporters gathered in front of the King County Courthouse. He didn't bring lawyers. He brought a flash drive. This isn't about a single officer, he began. It's about a pattern, about power unchecked, about the silence that often follows. I had a name and a camera to protect me. Most people don't. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The cameras did the work for him. I'm calling for a federal review into law enforcement. Conduct in traffic stops, especially in rural and low-populated areas, where accountability is weakest. This incident wasn't an outlier. It was a glimpse. He paused, and it was filmed. He handed the drive over to a Department of Justice liaison and walked off stage without taking questions. So, in the days that followed, the momentum spread. Other victims came forward. Some had footage. Some didn't. But now they had a microphone, borrowed from the world's most famous technologist. Bill spent his evenings reading testimonies, emails from teachers, Uber drivers, veterans. A man in Mississippi wrote, "You got pulled over and the world noticed. I got pulled over and no one believed me." Gates didn't flinch from the weight of it. He embraced it. He met with civil rights groups, law scholars, retired police officers. He formed a task force, civilian-led, not appointed by governors. He demanded that Microsoft's AI teams review all facial recognition systems they had developed for law enforcement agencies. Some contracts were frozen, others canceled outright. I won't profit from broken trust, he told his team. Sarah stayed close, not as a spokesperson but as a friend. She'd gone from a passerby to a catalyst, and Bill never let her forget the moment she chose not to keep driving. One night, as they prepared for a Senate committee appearance, Sarah turned to him. "You know you don't have to do all this, right?" Bill gave her a half smile. "No, but I should have done it a long time ago." Weeks passed. The media storm settled, but the tremors remained. Investigations had begun in multiple states. Congressional hearings had been scheduled. Gates had testified in front of 2 Senate committees, calmly but relentlessly stating the same thing. What happened to me wasn't unique. The only difference was a camera and a name. But beyond the walls of government, something deeper was shifting. Departments around the country began issuing interim reforms. Training programs were revised. Body cam footage release policies were reevaluated. Community review boards, long requested, often ignored, were suddenly back on the table. Gates didn't claim credit. He didn't want it. This wasn't about him anymore. So, one morning, weeks after the courthouse press conference, Gates walked alone into a quiet school in rural Louisiana. It was the same district he had visited the day before the traffic stop. No press, no cameras, just him, a group of students, and the teacher who had once asked him to visit without warning. He sat in the back of a dusty classroom, while a young boy stood nervously in front of a whiteboard, explaining a project on ethics in technology. "And I think," the boy said, clearing his throat. We shouldn't just build stuff because we can. We should ask who it helps, and who it might hurt. Bill smiled faintly. The bell rang. Students left. The teacher approached him quietly. The kids have been talking about you. Not about Microsoft, about that night. You scared them. But you also gave them something real. He nodded. Later that day, as he waited for his return flight, Gates scrolled through his inbox. Dozens of new messages, but one subject line stopped him. Video footage released in Mississippi. Stop, Mansides Gates precedent in complaint. He opened it. A grainy clip. A voice shaking. Another story starting. He set the phone down and looked out the window of the small airport lounge. The sky was overcast, quiet. Sarah's words echoed in his memory. You don't have to do all this. But he knew now he did, because justice wasn't one moment. It was a choice. One person at a time, choosing not to look away,